We're going to do some mental math and some estimating in this video, all with rational numbers. So let's start off using mental math. Remember, when I write it on paper, it's going to look strange because this is what we should be doing in our head. It says, use mental math to find the exact answer. Like they want the exact answer. So how would we multiply a mixed number times a whole number in our heads? Well, if we think about it, the 3 1/8 is like 3 plus 1/8. And we're multiplying that by 24. So we need to make sure that the 3 gets multiplied by the 24, but we also need to make sure the 1/8 gets multiplied by the 24. This is like 2 pieces times 1. 2 times 1 is 2, so you'll have 2 multiplications. So in your head, you would multiply 3 times 24. Right? 3 times 24 would be 72. I don't know if you could multiply that in your head. Maybe you could. It's 3 20s and then 3 4s. So like 60 and 12. That's 72. And then you have to do the 1/8 times 24. Well, 1/8 of 24 is like dividing 24 by 8. So that would be 3. And if you add those together, you get 75. Remember, we were supposed to be doing this all in our heads. I'm just writing it down. So 75. So 3 times 24 is 72, and then 1/8 of 24 is 3, and you add those together. But I'll admit, that's a lot to do in your head. What about 2/5 times 20? There's a couple ways you can do this. 2/5 times 20, if you think of the 20 as 20 over 1, then when you multiply across the top, you get 40. And when you multiply the bottom, you get 5, and 40 divided by 5 is 8. So I think you could do that one in your head pretty easily, right? Or you could think of, well, what's 1/5 of 20? That would be 4, and then you could double it. Maybe you could do it that way. I don't know, there's lots of ways, but we're trying not to have to write anything down, but usually it only works well in your head if the numbers are kind of nice. If the numbers aren't nice, that's when we like to estimate. You know, I always like to circle like estimation and say we're just getting an approximate answer. It doesn't have to be perfect. And usually what we'll use is some sort of rounding. So I think with rational numbers, it's nice to get like a range. Like I think the answer is somewhere between these two numbers. So we're going to do like a low estimate and a high estimate. So first what I'm going to do is, it does say estimate the answers by rounding. So let's round these mixed numbers off to whole numbers. So I'm going to round down, which should give us a low estimate. So 3 1/3, if I round that down, that's just 3. 2 3/4, if I round that down, that would be 2. So 6 would be like a low estimate. 6. If I round up, 3 1/3 rounded up would be 4. 2 3/4 rounded up would be 3. You're rounding both numbers up. I would get 12. You see how that would be a high estimate? So this tells me the answer is between 6 and 12. This is the estimate that I would give because they didn't ask for the exact answer. I'm just estimating, hey, I think the answer is somewhere between 6 and 12. That's what I think. So I round down, I get a low estimate. I round up, I get a high estimate. Let's see what happens with division. So this one is a division problem. And again, I don't want to have to divide all that, so I'm just going to estimate. So if I round down, so 24 1/2, I call it 24. 4 1/8, I call it 4. See how I rounded both numbers down? 24 divided by 4 is 6. So that's one estimate. I think this is pretty close to 6. Normally you'd think that was your low estimate. But wait before you write that down. Let's round up. 24 1/2, if we round up, that's 25. And 4 1/8, if I round that up, that's 5. And 25 divided by 5 is 5. So actually, with division, it's backwards. If you round down, you get the high estimate. And if you round up, you get the low estimate. I don't want you to like think too hard about that and like have it break your brain. Just know when you get the two numbers, the high and the low might be opposite of what you thought they were going to be when you actually do the math. So this tells me the answer is between 5 and 6. Actually, that's a pretty good estimate. We've got it narrowed down that the answer is somewhere between 5 and 6. That's a little better estimate than what we were able to get on this one at the top. So that's how you can estimate. Just round both numbers down or round both numbers up. Okay, that's a good way to estimate. So let's try a word problem. So this says, Susie babysits on the weekends for extra money. She spends about 2/5 of her income going to the movies with friends. If her monthly babysitting income is $88, how much money does she spend on movies? And it says, estimate the answer, then find the exact. You always, always, always estimate first. So we're going to estimate. And what you want to do is just round to easy numbers. If you can't do the math in your head, you probably haven't rounded enough. So what we're trying to figure out is 2/5 of her income. We're trying to figure out how much that is. Her income is $88. So we're trying to find what is 2/5 of $88. So the first thing is you have to figure out what kind of a problem is this. And this, because of the word of, is going to be a multiplication problem. So we're trying to estimate 2/5 times 88. We're estimating it. So I'm going to use my little squiggly equals here to say approximately. How can we estimate that? Well, there's a couple ways you can do it. You can try to make the fraction easier by rounding it, or you can try to make the 88 easier by rounding it. Maybe you wanted to round 88 to 90, make that as a nicer number. 2/5, that's pretty close to a half. Half of 5 is 2.5. So 2.5 would be a half. So 2/5 is pretty close to that. I think if we just call it, and remember we're estimating here, 1/2 times 88. I mean, 88 is even, right? Half of 88, $44. I think that would be a perfect estimate. Or you could say half of 90 and call it $45. That would also be okay. As long as I can tell like what you did to come up with your answer, then it's great. Then there's more than one answer that I'll take. But I would round one or both numbers maybe. So call it a half and call that 88, or round it to 90. So $44 or $45 would be a great estimate. Now if we want to find the exact value, we don't have the luxury of rounding. So the exact value is going to be 2/5 times 88. And that's like 88 over 1. So I have to do 2 times 88, which you might need a calculator for that. It's 176 divided by 5. And then you have to divide 176 by 5. Now, considering the fact that this is money, I'm okay with this just being decimals. So if we wanted to do, see, we did 88 times 2, right, to get our 176. And then if we divide by 5, that would be $35.20. So I think because this is an exception that it's money, we can use decimals here. So $35.20, that's the exact amount she spent on the movies. This is exactly. We were approximating up here. Now, how good was our approximation? It wasn't that great, but whatever. It was an approximation. We were just approximating. There's kind of like not a right or wrong answer unless you're just way off on your approximation. So that would be the exact amount versus the approximate amount. Use rounding. Make it easy on yourself. That's the whole point of estimating.